I tried a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokémon Emerald using only the water starters, and with some late game threats, it's gonna be terrifying. In a Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's dead forever, and I can only encounter one new water starter after winning a gym badge. The rest of the rules for this playthrough are on the screen and in the description down below. Also, keep watching to see how you can play this mod for yourself. Let's get started. As per a usual Hoenn playthrough, I start out with Mudkip. The creator of this ROM hack, Nuzlocke Joe, made the Hoenn starters Squirtle, Totodile, and Mudkip. By the way, you should subscribe to Nuzlocke Joe, he makes great content, and keep watching to see how to play the mod for yourself. Oh, and you should also subscribe to me because I make great Pokemon content. Anyway, Fiji here is cleanly able to dispatch of Maze Trico with a few extra levels, meaning we're already off to face Roxanne, the Rock-type gym leader. Her first two Geodudes go down to a water gun apiece, and her ace Nosepass comes in. I hit a water gun for decent damage, as Nosepass just goes for a Rock Tomb. Nosepass then takes this opportunity to go for a block, which is fine because a second water gun brings her down to her Citrus Berry. And then I get hit with a Tackle, bringing me down to my Orange Berry, but I get a critical hit water gun, taking Nosepass out, winning me the battle and the first gym badge. After saving the world's worst employee and watching Fiji enter puberty, look at those eyes, I go to Rust Earth Tunnel. Nuzlocke Joe has made it so that Whisper Cave is now the place to get all the starters, and my first random starter Pokemon is Totodile. I was hoping for something cooler, but Aquafina is still a pretty good Pokemon, and with some quick levels, he quickly evolves into a powerful Croconaw. By the way, all of these starters have their hidden abilities, because 8 Pokemon with the same ability is kind of boring. This is just in time, because after we take a boat ride, it's time to face Brawly and his fighting types. He leads off with Machop, and I lead off with Fiji. Fiji immediately goes for a Mudshot, as Machop just sets up a Bulk Up. A Mudshot on the following turn leaves Machop barely alive, as I tank a Karate Chop. This then prompts Brawly to heal up, but then my Mudshot gets a better roll and does half. But then I low roll again, leaving Machop barely alive, and allowing him to set up another Bulk Up. Brawly then burns through another potion, before 2 more Mudshots get the KO. Second is Metatite, and with another level, I'm feeling pretty confident. By the way, edging levels are completely fine. Actually, as long as we hit this thing, Metatite can't really do anything. Annoyingly, Metatite does set up a couple of screens, but eventually I pull through and get the KO with some Mudshots. Brawly's last Pokemon is his Makuhita, and this isn't my best matchup. As a result, my Mudshot only does a fifth before Makuhita starts setting up Bulk Up. On the following turn, a Growl brings Makuhita back to normal attack as he goes for a hard Vital Throw. At the very least, the light screen is gone, and I hit another Mudshot, bringing him down to his berry as he sets up another Bulk Up. And then, on the next turn, I go for another Growl to offset the attack boost, but then he sets up another Bulk Up. This isn't looking good. A Mudshot on the following turn barely misses out on the KO, but he just sets up another Bulk Up. And since we outspeed, a follow-up Mudshot gets the KO, winning me the battle and the second gym badge. Ironically, my next encounter is Yeti the Popplio, who would have came in so much handy literally 5 minutes ago. But hey, you know what they say, better late than never. After a meeting with Team Aqua, it's rival fight time. May leads off with her Wingull, and I lead off with Yeti, who's now evolved into a Brionne. Yeti tanks a Water Pulse before an Icy Wind brings this thing into the yellow HP range. Wingull on the following turn then misses a Supersonic before another Icy Wind gets the KO. May's second Pokemon is her Grovyle with Mega Drain, which is terrifying. Grovyle outspeeds and hits a hard Absorb right off the bat. Fortunately, Yeti knows Icy Wind, which is pretty good, and it does massive damage. After tanking another Mega Drain, leaving me with just 8 HP, I get the KO with another Icy Wind. Third is Slugma, and I mean, come on, look at this thing, it can't do much damage. However, I still switch into Aquafina to be safe on an Incinerate. And then on the following turn, a Water Gun gets the KO, winning me the battle. Immediately after this is a fight with Watson. You may think he's a big deal, but Fiji sweeps his entire team with Mudshots. The Manectric is a bit annoying with Hal, Quick Attacks, and Watson's Super Potion. So by the time Electrike comes in, I have no Mudshot PP left. And this means I gotta do the unthinkable. I gotta resort to an 85% accurate move in Mud Bomb. And luckily I connect to get the KO, winning me the battle and the third gym badge. Honestly, if I didn't have Fiji, things would have been so much harder. A return to Whisper's Cave grants me Fiji the Piplup, which I know is the same nickname as Marshtop, so we're gonna call him Stanley. With 4 Pokemon, it's time to take on Maxie, who is sort of my secondary rival in this game, seeing as he hates water types. He leads off with Mighty Anna, and I lead off with Yeti, who goes for a Swagger on the first turn. And then a Disarming Voice does decent damage, luckily. Eventually, through some pivots with Stanley, I get the KO with a Bubble Beam. Against the Camerupt, I just go for a Bubble Beam to get the clean one-shot because this thing is quad times super effective. And his final Pokemon is a Zubat, so it's back off to Yeti on a Confuse Ray. Zubat then outspeeds on the following turn and hits an Air Cutter before I go for a Bubble Beam doing decent damage. Then the turns repeat themselves where Zubat goes for an Air Cutter and I go for a Bubble Beam to get the KO, winning me the battle against my true rival of the game. After this, it's time to fight Flannery for badge number 4. Her lead Numel just goes down to 1 Water Gun from Fiji. Her bigger, scarier Camel comes in, sets up the Sun, and lives a Water Gun. This is pretty bad. A Growl on the following turn lowers its attack as I get hit by an Attract. This is pretty bad. On the following turn, it's off to Yeti on a Tackle. And then a Bubble Beam gets the KO. Third is Torkoal, and I try to go for an Encore here, and I try to be cheeky, but it fails because I outspeed and I didn't check my calcs. Torkoal then goes for an Attract on the following turn, which is pretty annoying. I stay in because Yeti's no simp and it's a hard Bubble Beam as the bulky turtle goes for another Sunny Day. It's not like it matters because another Bubble Beam on the following turn is enough for the KO. Her last Pokemon, Slugma, who let's be real can't even hit us, just goes down to 1 Bubble Beam, winning me the battle and a pretty easy 4th gym badge. I also catch Pole in the Oshawott, and that's gonna matter because it's time to take Norman for the 5th gym badge. He leads off with Spino, who immediately outspeeds and goes for a Side Beam before I hit a hard Razor Shell. On the following turn, I tank another Side Beam and get the KO with a follow-up Razor Shell. Norman's Ace Slaking comes in, and it looks like Poland's gonna have to die for me to get a clean switch. He immediately just gets destroyed by a Facade, marking our first death of the run, but it's definitely necessary to get a free switch out into Fiji. Fiji is then able to go for 3 Growls, lowering Slaking's attack, which pretty much neutralizes him. And then he's able to go for a Mud Bomb for some chip damage, as Slaking just hits a Yawn. On the following turn, I get off a critical hit Mud Bomb before falling asleep. It's not like that exactly matters because Aquafina comes in for free on the loafing turn. Aquafina then goes to 3 Leers, lowering Slaking's defense before falling asleep. Eventually I wake up and get off a hard crunch, bringing Slaking down to his berry. A crunch on the following turn barely leaves Slaking alive, causing Norman to heal up, but eventually through some more crunches we get the KO. Third is Lanoon, who tries to set up on me with a belly drum, but I go for an Ice Fang, which immediately gets the KO. I went with Ice Fang here because I wasn't sure if Lanoon outsped, and Ice Fang has a higher chance to either flinch or freeze. Against Vigoroth, I switch out into Stanley on a Slash that crits, and then after taking a Facade, I hit a Metal Claw. Since I need Fiji, I pivot out into Yeti on a Facade. On the following turn, I take another critical hit Slash as I hit an Icy Wind, barely leaving Vigoroth alive. Thankfully, it's not like Norman heals up on the following turn, so after taking another Slash, an Icy Wind gets the KO, winning me the battle and the 5th gym badge. It also marks the first death of our run, which is pretty bad. As the sun sets on Poland's journey, a new sun rises on Deer Park the Frogadier's journey. With some leveling up, he quickly evolves into a Frogadier with Protean, which changes his type depending on his move. So for example, if he uses Ice Beam, he becomes an Ice type. It's really a phenomenal and broken ability. And that's gonna matter because it's rival time. May leads off with her Slugma, and I lead off with Deer Park, who in the rain and has just learned Surf, just gets the clean one-shot. Deer Park levels up here as well and learns Smackdown, which is a pretty amazing move, and you'll see why later. Her second Pokemon is a Grovyle, and with Protean, I'm not really worried. In fact, I immediately outspeed and go for an Ice Beam to get the clean one-shot. Her third Pokemon is a Lombre, who actually damages me with a Fake Out, but come on, it's a Fake Out. And then on the following turn, an Ice Beam does around half as I tank a surprisingly hard Bubble Beam. and then a second Ice Beam gets the KO, winning me the battle. In the future, I'll try not to overuse Deer Park because he's broken. But not now, because Deer Park swoops in Nona's entire team with Ice Beam and Surf. For Skarmory, I went with Surf over Ice Beam because if I got hit by Steel moves and I was an Ice type, then things could have been an issue. I was a little bit worried about Tropius, but then I realized this thing will just go down to any Ice Beam. I was a bit scared about the Altaria because I thought it outsped, but it didn't. And then the Pelipper delays the inevitable by spamming Protect, as all Pelippers do, but eventually 2 Ice Beams get the KO, winning me the battle. And as a result, all of my Pokemon evolve into their final forms. And now, I'll tell you where to find this mod. Step 1. Go to Nuzlocke Joe's video and look at the Google Drive linked in the description, and download this. Then find a ROM and patch tool and patch a file of the game. I also catch a Squirtle who's a pretty decent Pokemon with Rain Dish and even Rain Dance later on. After watching Maxie use the wrong orb and Team Aqua jack a Summering, it's immediately back to the gym challenge with a double battle against Tate and Liza. The twins lead off with Xatu and Claydol, and I lead off with Deer Park and Aquafina. Deer Park goes for an Ice Beam on the first turn, which results in a clean one-shot against Xatu. The Claydol outspeeds and Earthquakes both of my Pokemon for a bit of damage before taking a crunch from Aquafina. The twins then send in Soul Rock, so Deer Park takes this opportunity to go for a Surf, which just kills Claydol, and it brings Soul Rock down to its berry, which is pretty good. Soul Rock then wastes a turn going for a Flamethrower into Deer Park. I wasn't sure what the AI was really planning here, but I think it thought that Deer Park was an Ice type. Anyway, it's not like it matters because a Crunch gets the KO. Their final Pokemon is a Lunatone, and Deer Park goes for a Surf around half as this thing sets up a Light Screen. It's not like it matters because a Crunch gets the KO, winning me the battle and the 7th gym badge. After this, I pick up the TM for Earthquake, which I teach to Fiji and Stanley. This is perfect because it's Archie time. He leads off with his Mightyena, and I lead off with Deer Park, who immediately eats the Intimidate. A Surf does around half HP to Mightyena, as the evil puppy just goes for an Embargo on the first turn, which does no damage. Archie then heals up, and a few more Surfs do the job. Second is Sharpedo, so it's off to Fiji on a Scary Face. Fiji has a secret surprise, as he can Mega Evolve. However, he still gets outsped here, and tanks a Poison Fang before killing Sharpedo with a Mega Boosted Earthquake. Archie's final Pokemon is a Crobat who outspeeds me and goes for a Leech Life before I go for an Ice Beam, which doesn't get the KO. After taking a final Leech Life, an Ice Beam closes out the battle. Honestly, I just wanted to show Mega Swampert. This battle is completely skippable. Archie then uses the Red Orb on the blue Pokemon, which, come on, use your brain. This then causes me to go find the green Pool Noodle and take care of Groudon and Kyogre like he's their father. With that out of the way, it's time to face Juan for the 8th and final gym badge. He leads off with Love Disc, and I lead off with Stanley, who misses a Sweet Kiss and tanks an Earthquake. On the following turn, I tank another Sweet Kiss, but it's too late as an Earthquake gets the KO. Second is Wish Cast, so it's off to Deer Park on an Earthquake. A Surf on the following turn does decent damage into Whiscash, and then he sets up the Rain, which is completely fine by me. In fact, his Rain actually nips him in the butt here because my Surf is boosted by 50%, meaning he just goes down. Third is Crawdon, who takes a lot of damage from a resisted Surf before going for a Crab Hammer for massive damage. Since I'm too low to stay in, it's off to Fiji on a Water Pulse. Fiji on the following turn then Mega Evolves and goes for an Earthquake and immediately picks up the KO. This baits in Juan's ace, Kingdra, who is horrifying with Double Team and a Citrus Berry. At the very least, the rain stops, so that's good. Kingdra sets up a Double Team, but I actually get a critical hit Earthquake. Juan heals up, and an Earthquake actually does decent damage. I then have to tank a Water Pulse before I get the KO with an Earthquake. Juan's last Pokemon is a Celio, so it's off to Evermore for his debut battle on a Water Pulse. To be honest, Evermore is more of a setup Pokemon and only has Bite, which is a pretty weak move. So after a while of hitting Bite, I switch out into Stanley on a Water Pulse. That of course confuses. Stanley on the following turn gets off an Earthquake, bringing Celio into the red before tanking a Body Slam. And then on the next turn, Fiji hurts himself as Celio hits a Water Pulse. It's not like it matters because an Earthquake on the following turn gets the KO, winning me the 8th and final gym badge. With that, I'm in Evergrande City, home of the Pokemon League. There's some crazy trainers here, and with all my Pokemon leveled up to the final level cap of 55, it's gonna be tough. Here's my final team, and also I forgot to go back and get Inteleon. So let's do this, well, without Inteleon. First is Sydney and his Dark types. Sydney isn't an issue, so this probably won't be any different. He leads off with Mightyena, and I lead off with Fiji. Fiji Mega evolves and goes for an Ice Beam, doing around 50% before he tanks a Crunch. An Ice Beam on the following turn barely leaves Mightyena alive and gets the freeze, but Mightyena defrosts and roars into Aquafina. Sydney then heals back up to full HP on the following turn, but then I go for a massive Surf. The AI is smart enough in this game, and it knows it has a counter, so Sydney switches into Cacturne, who eats the Surf like it's no problem. Luckily, I have Ice Fang, which just gets the KO. Third is Absol, who on their first turn hits a critical hit slash before a Surf brings him down to his berry. After tanking a follow-up slash on the following turn, a follow-up Surf leaves Absol barely alive because of course that's the motif of this run. Absol then gets off a hard rock slide before being killed by a Surf. Fourth is Crawdon, and I pivot into Fiji on a Facade. On the following turn, I go for a Protect, but then Crawdon goes for a Swords Dance, which is pretty bad. An Earthquake barely misses out on the KO for the third time in this match before Fiji tanks a +1 Facade. Luckily, an Earthquake on the following turn is enough for the KO. Mightyena then comes back in, but with only half of its HP. Because of the Intimidate, I switch out into Evamore on a Crunch. Evamore then sets up the Rain before tanking another Crunch. The Rain is pretty much crucial in order to guarantee the KO on Mightyena. This means on the following turn, I'm able to go for a Surf to get the KO on Mightyena, leaving Shiftry. This is a terrible matchup for me, so it's off to Deer Park as Shiftry sets up a double team. Not exactly what I was expecting. It's not like it matters because on the following and last turn, an Ice Beam gets the clean one-shot thanks to Protean winning me the battle. Second is Phoebe, the Ghost type trainer, and she isn't nearly as bad as Sydney. She leads off with Dusclops and I lead off with Fiji. Fiji goes for a Protect as Dusclops goes for a Confuse Ray. Dusclops then goes for a Protect into my Surf. Luckily, Fiji gets off a Surf around 55% as Dusclops goes for a Confuse Ray. Fiji then hurts himself in Confusion as Dusclops lays a Curse, meaning we're no longer safe to stay in. On the following turn, I switch into Stanley on a failed Protect. Phoebe then heals up back to full HP as Dusclops tanks an Earthquake. Dusclops protects on the following turn, meaning I don't connect with my Earthquake. Luckily, a Surf on the following turn brings Dusclops into the red as I get nailed with a Confuse Ray. I then proceed to hurt myself in Confusion and tank a Shadow Punch. Luckily, I snap out on the following turn and kill with a Surf. Second is Baynet, who hits a hard Thunderbolt before tanking an even harder Surf. Since I'm low on HP, I switch out into Evamore on the following turn on a Thunderbolt who tanks it fairly well. Evamore then Mega Evolves on the following turn and goes for a Bite to get the KO. Looking back on the footage, I don't even know why I evolved Evamore. I should have evolved Fiji. Anyway, third is Sableye, who takes a Bite and then hits a Shadow Ball, lowering my special defenses. Since it's no longer safe to stay in, it's off to Aquafina on a Shadow Ball. A Crunch on the following turn does decent damage as Sableye hits a Nightshade. It's not like it matters, and a follow-up Crunch gets the KO. Fourth is Phoebe, second Baynet, so I stay in and get off a Crunch, leaving this thing barely alive. Look at that HP bar, and it goes for a Will-O-Wisp. Luckily, another Crunch gets the KO. This just leaves Phoebe's last Pokemon, a Dusclops. I switch out into Deer Park on an Earthquake. Deer Park then goes for a Surf on the following turn, doing decent damage before tanking an Earthquake. Since I'm probably dead to another Earthquake, I switch out into Yeti on a Shadow Ball. It's not like it matters because a Moonblast on the following turn gets the KO, winning me the battle. Finally, that took so long. Third is Glacia. She leads off with Celio and I lead off with Stanley. Stanley hits an Earthquake on the first turn as Celio sets up the Hail, which is a bit of an issue. An Earthquake on the following turn leaves Celio in the yellow before he hits a Body Slam, paralyzing Stanley. This means it's off to Fiji on a critical hit Body Slam. A Protect on the following turn reveals that Celio is going for Ice Ball, so that's pretty good to know considering my team of Water types. And then on the following turn, I Mega Evolve and hit an Earthquake, which just gets the KO on Celio. But that's just the start of things. Second is Glalie, who resets the hail back up before tanking a massive Earthquake. Glacie then gets off a boosted Ice Beam on the following turn that freezes. Great. This means it's off to Evamore on another Ice Beam, which luckily doesn't do that much damage considering how tanky he is. Evamore on the following turn then sets up the rain before taking a Shadow Ball for decent damage. I then click Protect on the next turn, and this is a huge mistake as Glalie sets the hail back up. Glalie then outspeeds on the next turn and hits another Shadow Ball as I reset the rain back up. Glalie then resets the hail again before a bite leaves him in the red HP range. On the following turn, I outspeed and pick up the KO with a Surf. I'm really trying to conserve my power points here, so that's why I use Surf over another move. Third is Glacia's second even more annoying Celio. At this point, it's off to Deer Park as this thing goes for an Attract. Fine. This means I have to switch out into Aquafina on a Double Edge. Side note, I am just so happy that all of her Celios are not fully evolved, otherwise this fight would be a huge problem. A Crunch on the following turn then does massive damage as I get hit by an Attract. The issues of having an all-male Pokemon team. At least Aquafina isn't a simp and hits another Crunch, bringing Celio into the red as he resets the hail back up. Glalie then heals back to full HP before a Crunch does around a third. Another Crunch on the following turn brings Celio back into the red as Celio goes for another Double Edge. Since I'm low on HP, I have to switch out into Yeti on a full restore. That's another theme you're going to see this run. There's a lot of healing and not from me. Yeti is then greeted by an Attract and then a Moonblast brings the Celio back into the yellow HP range. Celio then proceeds to outspeed and set the hail back up before another Moonblast finally is enough for the KO. That took so long. But we're not out of the woods yet as Glacia's most powerful Pokemon Walrein comes in. It immediately hits an Ice Beam before I hit a Moonblast. Celio then hits a Body Slam, which of course paralyzes me because why not? My Moonblast connects, which barely leaves Walrein alive, but it restores HP with a Berry. At the very least, after taking another Body Slam, I get the KO with a Moonblast. Glacia's last Pokemon is a Glalie. Since Yeti is low on HP, it's off to Deer Park on a Light Screen. At the very least, the hail stops here, and a Smackdown does exactly half to Glalie as I then take an Icy Wind for a bit of chip damage. And then I finally get a critical hit with my Smackdown, getting the KO, winning me the battle. That took so long. Fun fact, this battle takes up 80% of a page on a 7-page script. Fourth is Drake, the Dragon Trainer, and surely he can't be too hard. After all, I have a full team of Pokemon with Ice Beam. Against a Shelgon, I Mega Evolve and go for an Ice Beam, which barely misses out on the KO as I get hit with a Rock Tomb. Drake then heals up, but then 2 Ice Beams after that get the KO. Second is Salamence, who comes in and drops my attack with an Intimidate. Salamence luckily misses a Rock Slide before an Ice Beam barely gets the KO this time and restores HP with a Berry. Luckily, Salamence just misses another Rock Slide and falls to another Ice Beam. Third is Flygon, who goes for a Dragon Breath before I connect with an Ice Beam to get the KO. Fourth is Kingdra, and I'm out of Ice Beam PP as well as Paralyzed. Kingdra sets up a Dragon Dance before I get fully paralyzed. This isn't looking good. Kingdra then sets up a second Dragon Dance before I connect with an Earthquake for around decent damage. A Body Slam does massive damage as I barely miss out on the KO with another Earthquake. This means I switch into Deer Park on a hard Body Slam that paralyzes. At the very least, Evamore is able to take the Body Slam much better. Kingdra sets up a final Dragon Dance before I get the KO with a Bite. Against Altaria, I Protect as it sets up a Dragon Dance. This means I have to switch into Yeti on another Dragon Dance. This isn't looking good. Altaria then hits an Aerial Ace before I go for a Moonblast, which just gets the clean one-shot, winning me the battle. After this, Deer Park evolves into Greninja. Fun fact, I created a whole new level cap just so I could use an Ash Greninja for the upcoming Wallace fight. This Pokemon is amazing. Last is the champion, Wallace, another water specialist. He leads off with a terrifying Wailord, and I lead off with Fiji. I Mega Evolve and hit an Earthquake as Wailord sets up a Rain Dance. This is actually fine by me. A second Earthquake on the following turn then picks up the KO. Second is Wallace's stupid Ludicolo, and I don't have an Aerial Ace or any Ice Beam PP. I protect on the first turn to waste some Giga Drain PP. I do the same thing on the second turn and waste 2 Giga Drain PPs. I then get Leech Seeded on the following turn as an Earthquake does decent damage. And then I go for another Protect as Ludicolo sets up a double team. This is pretty bad as Ludicolo is almost to full HP. Ludicolo sets up another double team as I connect with an Earthquake luckily. This isn't looking good. Ludicolo then outspeeds on the following turn and connects with a Giga Drain to end Fiji's life, and it looks like he's not going to be the only one. At the very least, Yeti's able to get a free switch in. Yeti is seeded like Fiji, but a Moonblast does big damage. Ludicolo then tries to be cheeky on me and set up with another double team, but a second Moonblast is enough for the KO. Third is Tentacruel, which is baited by Yeti's Fairy type. Luckily, I have an answer in Stanley, who completely walls Tentacruel. Stanley walls Tentacruel apart from Hydro Pump. At the very least, an Earthquake does massive damage before he tanks another Hydro Pump and then kills with another Earthquake. Fourth is Whiscash, and with Stanley's secondary Steel type, it means he's not surviving against an Earthquake, so it looks like Wallace is going to be claiming another Pokemon's life. Whiscash then outspeeds and gets the KO with an Earthquake. At the very least, I get a safe switch into Deer Park, who fires off a Surf on the following turn for around half before tanking a hard Earthquake. A second Surf is enough for the KO as Wallace's scary Gyarados comes in. I hit a hard Smackdown before an Earthquake leaves Deer Park with just 8 HP. Another Smackdown on the following turn brings Gyarados into the yellow HP range before Deer Park falls to a Hyper Beam. Yeti comes in on Gyarados' resting turn and is able to go for a Moonblast, which just gets the KO. This just leaves Wallace's Ace Milotic, and with 3 Pokemon left, I'm feeling extremely confident. Milotic hits an Ice Beam before I hit a hard Moonblast. I then have the idea where I switch into Evamore on an Ice Beam. This is to waste Milotic's Citrus Berry, and I'd rather have Yeti at full HP because of Moonblast doing more damage than whatever Evamore can do. Anyway, Evamore comes in on an Ice Beam, and then on the following turn just starts whittling away at Milotic as he just goes for a Toxic. Unfortunately, Milotic starts recovering, and with the poison damage, it looks like Evamore isn't going to survive. Another Surf from Milotic gets the KO. At least Aquafina is able to come in and get hit with a Toxic before going for a Crunch for massive damage. I then tank a Surf before hitting another Crunch, which just gets the critical hit, but it's barely enough and Wallace heals up, and a Crunch only does decent damage. With the poison and an Ice Beam, Aquafina falls. This just leaves Yeti. Yeti comes in, tanks a Surf, and then goes for a Moonblast to get the KO, winning me the battle and the run. Thank you so much for watching. Huge shout out to Nuzlocke Joe for making this mod. Like I said, go to his video description, go to the Google Drive, and there should be a patch file. Keep in mind you need your own ROM to play the game, and I can't help you with that because it's illegal. I definitely want to make a video on the fire and grass starters, which are going to be super hard. And make sure to totally leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter for future updates. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Have a great day.